Hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining in. And thanks Ashish for agreeing to, give your interview and share your insights in your career journey. So, a very quick introduction of Ashish is that Ashish is a alumni of IIM Bangalore, and right now he's working as client relationship manager in Traceta. And earlier he was working in Piramal Capital and Housing Finance Limited as AVP for Generative AI products. And before that, he was in different roles in Walmart and Tata, some of the divisions of Tata Industry Limited, and all. Right, and he was also in Kantar. So what we are going to do today is basically try to understand his journey. We'll try to ask some specific questions on what worked, what did not work, some questions, some insights which he has, and so that we can also learn from it. We also get inspired from it. And the idea is that we share some practical insights to all of you. So with that, thank you so much, Ashish, once again. Right,
Thank you,
and
Alok. Thanks, Alok, for having me on the podcast, and I'm looking forward to the conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So maybe, although I kind of gave you a brief about your profile, but could you maybe start with sharing your journey? What helped? How is your profile evolved? Maybe some more about it.
Sure. So, thanks, Alok. So, I'll start with the beginning of how it all started. So, coming from a tier two city, like a typical profile, I started doing my engineering, and I did my engineering in material science and metallurgical engineering. I was not supposed to come into a quantitative field. I was more likely to end up at a steel plant or a aluminum plant, something like that. But luck had it in store that I ended up in a company which was actually working for the beverage sector. So that was my first job. When they came on campus, they talked about one of the clients that they were working with. I loved it, and somehow they liked me, and I ended up working for a startup back then called as Analytics Quotient. My first job was in product management before it was actually became a thing. So in 2015, no one used to talk a lot about product management. It was a term which no one used too much. But that was the start of my career. For the first time, I started understanding how to work with data, how to connect data to insights, to customer requirements, and converting it into a product altogether. So those were the initial days where I learned it all. Then I decided that I liked product, but I started liking data more. So I transitioned more from a consulting perspective into analytical consulting, and where I started working with the Tata Group. I worked with a company called as Tata Insights and Quants, wherein I transitioned from working as an individual contributor to a manager to leading that complete account. So yeah, that was a very interesting journey from 0 to 1, working for one of the biggest retail consumer electronics retailer in India, working with them on loyalty programs, customer analytics, and things like that. So very interesting journey there. Then I was fortunate to work with Walmart Global Tech, wherein I had a very short stint, but I worked with them on very interesting problems around how to optimize cloud costs and things like that. And I'm working more on the FinOps side of it. As luck would have it, and as the universe conspires that we meet old people again. And so one of my colleagues was working with Piramal, and he gave me a call one day. And I had one of the best stints of my career working with Piramal Finance. 1.5 years, everyday learnings, very interesting group of people to work with. I started working with data visualization. We talked about data stories, and from there, I went on to the generative AI products division, worked with my very good friends, and we built something we were extremely proud of. And we were actually also awarded by ET as one of the best use of generative AI in 2024. So when all this was actually going on, suddenly one day I thought, okay, MBA was my dream. I had kept it on the side for long, and somehow decided, okay, one last shot. And last day of filling the forms for round three for IIM Bangalore, I decided to just fill the form. And yes, IIMB happened. 1 year of amazing journey, amazing people, amazing professors, and the course in itself, and also the campus. Loved it. And Alok and I both can relate to the memories from the campus. And yeah, then eventually landed up with, I was lucky to get a placement with Traceta during the placement season. I'm right now working with them as their client relationship manager. I work with them around handling strategic clients as well as strategic partnerships as well. So that's my career journey and how it started and where I am today.
Great, great, great. Right. So that's a very diverse profile you had, and it's great to hear from you your journey. Just one question on this is, what would be you think would be some of the key challenges or doubts were you having in your career, which you had to overcome or to get ahead in your career to get ahead to where you are?
Sure. So, I look, there was always a lot of doubts. So, I come, like I said, when I started, I came from a non-quant engineering background, right? So, I didn't come from a computer science or a EC, which are typically the people who end up going into data and who start making their career there. But I come in from a metallurgy background. I just had a lot of love for data and I loved to experiment and read a lot. So, I think I was able to uh, get over my fear of not able to fit in with the crowd that I typically work with. And I carved my own path. I carved my own niche of what I was good at, right? So when I got into the room, I never had to think twice because I brought in something unique. So carving out what is unique to you as a person. I was never the best coder in the room. But what I was good at was I could link those numbers together and convert it into a story which the client was actually going to appreciate or find value in. So that was something that I was always good at, and that's how I carved my path through my career.
Got got
Yeah.
it. What would you say would be maybe one specific turning point in your career which kind of changed your preparation, or which kind of changed the course of your career, or which kind of gave you a totally different direction in your career?
Yeah. I think from a direction perspective, my second job when I was working with Tata Insights and Quants, my mentor, Mr. Tarun George, I think those conversations with him and understanding that just delivering something was never enough, right? So you can just go and deliver what the client had asked for. But until you actually start connecting those dots and making sense out of it, and trying to go a step beyond and remember that it's your name which is on the deliverable that you send out. Those things actually, I feel those were the fundamental building blocks that I learned from my manager and mentor Tarun back then, and which I think still I hold very true every time I have a situation where I, even in MBA, when we were trying to just make something and just submit it off, any always before I submitted, I used to ask myself, am I happy with what I have done? Does it make sense? Can I spend another couple of hours to just make that one final touch and make it something which I will appreciate myself submitting? So I think that was one thing which I believe was the turning point in my career, where I understood the value which every input that you give in, and when you present something, everything has a value and how important it is. That was one of the biggest turning points in my career.
Great, great. When you so you did MBA from IIM Bangalore, right, which is one of the best schools in the
Yeah.
world. What would you say? Maybe any specific example of maybe one learning, one subject, or one professor, or one experience, or anything which is
Yeah.
specific, which you think gave you the best learning, or which kind of changed you or transformed you to the.
While there are many subjects that I loved, but I'll just take one name here. So I think one of those courses was by Professor Shankar Venkatgiri. So Professor Shankar's course, he launched it for the first time. It was called as DBAI, Doing Business with AI. So they had launched it in, he launched it in SEM 4 for us, right? The term 4, doing business with AI. I felt while I had come in from a field where I was doing AI, right? So I had done AI for a long time before I came into IIM Bangalore. But what I realized was the perspective of building the business and linking the technology on how he inculcated those values of how do you classify, quantify the value, right? Why is there a technology which is needed to to ensure a certain outcome. Those things I think I will definitely take away from that course. While many such courses, many such takeaways, but I think that was one course where I felt it was extremely personal. I felt for every case that we did, I was taking something away from it. Even today, when I am in my at my work, when I think about a certain use case, suddenly when I'm thinking about an optical image recognition problem, there's an intense high case which we did in DBI, which comes to my mind suddenly. So there are subjects which just get imprinted on your mind, and you absolutely love it. And those are the kind of things that I think that left a big impression in my mind and how I think about things.
Great, 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 excellent. And I think Professor Venkatgiri is very good in
Yeah.
terms of his teaching style also, not
Yes.
just with the content, but the way he kind of delivers. Right. So that's great to know.
Yeah.
Let's also move to a bit more technical parts of your preparation. Maybe, for
Sure.
example, what do you think? Maybe one or two specific things in your resume that worked out, which a lot of people liked or recruiter liked. What could be those, or what did you do for them?
Sure. So I'll be as honest as that. When you look at my profile, I've had multiple mini stints, right? So was never doing something for a very, very long time. I started with product management. I got into data analytics, then transitioned into more of FinOps, which is another specialized wing of data analytics. Then I went into Piramal, where I was doing my role as a product owner or a product manager. So I have done multiple small stints. So for me, at time, the biggest thing which I had in mind was how do I present my profile. So one thing the realization was, I always realized that I was actually driving some kind of business value, right? My objective was never to give a deliverable and say, "Ki, this is over." What was the impact? I always used to go back to my clients and ask, what is the measure of what I gave you this deliverable? What are you doing with it? Can you walk me through the process of it? What is the impact behind it? So those were questions which at times people, when I was very new in my career, people used to be like, okay, how is he coming back and asking these kind of questions? But people soon started realizing after getting that data, I would go back and I would come back with a better version around it. So that kind of capability was there. And I thought that that value creation and that impact to business was something which I held very close to myself. So when the time came for the campus placements, when I was thinking about the preparation, I held that one value very close to me. What is the thing that is close to me is value creation, and how does what I do impact others, right? So because I had spent a long stint around analytical consulting, and I was around account management. So two profiles that I actually did prepare for was around consulting and around product management as well. But in the end, what I realized was both of them tied together, and I could also do something like a role like a CRM, where I was more involved with value creation, right? So all my preparation, which I had done individually for my consulting preparation, the case preps that I had done, the interviews that I had done, the product management interviews, the thinking behind it, right? All these fed into my final preparation for what I would say was my interview for the CRM role.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
So, in terms of interviews, moving to interviews, did you find any interview particularly tough or any question particularly interesting?
Yeah.
Any specific instance in the interview which you really kind of maybe which you learned or you find it very amusing from the interview perspective?
Yeah, one thing that I always say to everyone is in a typical MBA interview, MBA campus placement interview, it really doesn't matter whether you have done 1,000 cases or you have not. What matters is the work that you have done and what are your insights behind it, right? So I still remember during my interview, one of those questions was, which I find very interesting, was what was your contribution to your clients when you were in consulting, and what do you think was the value that it created? So like I said, Alok, before, I had this habit of always going back and trying to ask them about what's the value, where is my insight being used, what are the decisions that you are taking using it. So the framework that I always had was from deliverable, what is the decisioning, and from decisioning, what is the result. So this framework actually helped me a lot during my interview. Personally, my interview, I would say, was more around my experience only. I didn't have a lot of cases that you asked to me. It was all around my experience and talking about what were the metrics that I used to do in my work, etc. So I think having a good idea about the work that I had done and around the metrics around it was something which helped me really well during my interview.
Got it, got it. Now,
Yeah.
there's one more thing. Let's say somebody is preparing for either data analytics role or product management role or AI role or analytics role. Let's say if you have to tell a kind of a plan, right? Maybe a 30-day plan. What you think would be the top 4 or 5 activities this person should do for preparing for? You can take any role,
Sure.
either AI, data analytics, product management, and
Sure.
maybe give us an example, lay down that plan, right, which they can follow.
Sure. So let's talk about data analyst. I think that's one of the roles which resonated a lot with me. So I'll talk about data analytics as a role, right? So I typically see when anyone used to send me a resume, they had done all kinds of projects and everything. But I always felt those projects were very shallow in nature, right? So you typically you have a lot of projects floating around the internet where there's certain in 3 hours you create this, right?
Yes.
I typically want to, firstly I start whenever I try and mentor anybody, I say please don't believe in that. If there's a project which can be done in 3 hours, that then it is sure that I also know about that project. I might have done it myself at times, so I would know about it. Please don't do that. So so whenever you talk about a data analyst profile and how a person can actually get into a data analyst profile, I would typically say start from the very basics. What is data? First is try and understand what is data. What are the kinds of data, right? In today's world, everyone only thinks that everything can be uploaded into a chat GPT or a
Mm.
Claude and everything just gets done. In reality, you would realize even data scientists and a lot of people who actually do a lot of high-end AI modeling as well, they would tell you that data analysts and data engineers typically that the work that they do is 80% of the complete time that is spent, right? So
Mm.
firstly, understand what is data. Try and understand what you are trying to achieve in this role. A data analyst role is very different from a data engineer role
Mm.
versus a data scientist role. So
Mm.
firstly, understand what you're getting into. Please devote one day to understand and review a lot of interviews about good analysts, people who have done good work in the industry. For example, I always suggest to people who are starting a data analyst journey to follow Alex the Analyst. So he's a data analyst who has a very good YouTube channel, and he literally has done a lot of good work around it. So start firstly by understanding the work that a data analyst does. Secondly, try and build from first principles, right? First principles is not that you pick up a Power BI and you try and make a dashboard out of it. First principle is firstly understanding if you have a data set, what do you do? What are the things that are possible on top of it? First step could be thinking about just using a simple soft spreadsheet application like an Excel. Try and learn couple of things on how, if you get a Excel, if you get a spreadsheet in front of you, how do you build on top of it? What are the things that you can do using Excel? Try and understand the simple formulas, the ifs, the ands, and the ors, and conditionals, right? Talk about a VLOOKUP, talk about index match, things like that. Things which we think that are very easy to do, but when you start doing it, you realize, oh, there are complexities around it. I have met data scientists in my life who talk about Excel like such a big weapon, right? It's not. It's very simple. All you have to do is sit down, try and work around with some spreadsheets, try and understand. So spend a couple of days trying to understand how an Excel actually works. Think like an Excel. Think in terms of columnar information, right? So I would say devote the next couple of days or 3 days on trying to understand Excel. Try and understand pivot tables. Pivot tables, when you go into a managerial role, you will realize for the first time, most people realize without pivot table, you cannot survive in this world, right? You go and you want to show your P&L. How do you do it? You can't take a calculator and do plus, plus, plus or something like that. You need to know how does a pivot table work. You need to know how good formulas are written. You need to know how to lay out a spreadsheet. how to format it decently before you send it to someone. It's your impression that you're sharing, right? So I feel that's the first step. Devote diligently, you need to devote 2 to 3 days of effort to understand that. Pick up any course. Course picking is fine. You can use a LinkedIn learning to do that, or you just go to YouTube. There are hundreds of videos there. Do it. But please don't skip this step. Next, let's come to the bigger things in life. So Excel has certain limitations. You can only work with a certain amount of data inside Excel. But when you have data sets which are larger than that, how do you work with them? Usually in companies, you use SQL, right? You will have SQL again is something that you need to understand. There are multiple platforms which different companies use. Some would use Snowflake, some would use BigQuery, someone would use a Postgres as well, right? It just depends. It's just an editor. But understand the principles of how an SQL works. When you write a query, how is it executed? In all my interviews, I always used to ask, you have written this very nice query. Can I ask you what is the execution order? 90% people will not be able to tell you the execution order. And that's the first red flag, right? So I would say go to simple things. Again, when we used to learn, there used to be Geek for Geeks and things like that, where we used to go and we used to look at, okay, this is SQL. Okay, what is SQL? Then it talks about this is how you do it. Okay, when you want to aggregate information, you have to use a group by. When you have to sort something, you do it like this. So there are things that you need to learn. So these are fundamental building blocks. Every analyst needs to know this. So you're done with Excel, you are done with SQL. This typically will take you around 10 days to master. So 10 days on a initial level I wouldn't say the word masters, but I would say you'll get the hang of how things work. Once you're done with these things, so these things will help you create that data. Now think about how you're going to present it to someone, right? So there are simple. Start with a PowerPoint. How do you put information inside a chart in PowerPoint? How you think about bigger data? If you have a bigger data, you use something like a Tableau. You use something like a Power BI. So that's a couple of softwares that you can use. There are multiple other softwares. Please feel free to use any one which you like. Or the company which you're targeting, go and research. You will get to know what is their tech stack. Most companies will publish this tech stack, right? So this will be like a 15-day kind of a thing where you start understanding about the fundamentals. So I've covered the building blocks of looking at data, understanding the data on Excel, looking at it for big data using a SQL kind of a thing. Then you think about presenting the data. Now let's bring it all together. So these are the three building blocks I've fit in analysts like.
Yeah, it's great structure to
Yeah.
follow. Actually, thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Maybe just a curiosity question. A lot
Yeah.
of AI is being talked about. AI, agentic AI agents.
Yeah.
Where should that be included in business analytics role preparation, or how do you see that as a from the perspective of preparation for them?
So I'll give you a caveat with that. When you do any Gemini or any Chat GPT or a Claude, there's one note which is written at the bottom. It always says, this is AI and it can make mistakes. Why I always say that AI should not be fundamental preparation block of your when you're trying to become a certain profile is because when you don't know what is the right answer, how can you go into AI and assume ki what it is telling you is the correct thing?
No, no.
So yeah,
My question is about learning AI. For example, in
sure.
the yeah.
From a learning AI perspective, that's a completely different take.
Yeah.
I will definitely say everyone should know how to use AI. And one of the fundamental blocks is people think you just upload something on AI and you start chatting with it, right? AI doesn't work well when you start chatting with it. There are multiple different ways of prompting for data. So one thing that everyone should know is how to prompt better. Spend a day to learn how to prompt. A very good friend of mine last week, he taught me a concept called as meta prompting. So what happens in meta prompting is you ask ChatGPT to write a prompt for Claude, and you run that prompt on Claude, and it gives you better results. Those are the ways in which you will learn about one-shot prompting, few-shot promptings, and things like that. These are just words that I'm telling you because I know them and I use them, right? But what I am telling you is you need to go and learn about the basics of how to work with a system like Claude. Go to their website. It's easy. Go to their website, look at it. They always have a very good documentation section. They tell you about how to prompt better, how to get better results, right? You can, when you work with a lot of data, you have to also understand each of these models have a something called as context window. You cannot put unlimited quantity of information that you want and assume that it is going to take everything and give you a good result. It doesn't. You need to learn all those things. And these are very scattered things. Go to go to LinkedIn Learning. It has a very nice course by Claude Anthropic. It actually talks about how to learn AI better. And my personal experience with AI has been more experiential in nature. I have seen generative AI engineers in my team do very nice prompting. So I have been inspired by them. I've been inspired by my seniors and my ex bosses who have actually taught me about it. So, so everyone will have a different way of learning about it, but it is important to learn how to prompt.
Great. Um, any one myth you think which is there about business analytics which you want to break? I mean, people might think something about business analytics when they're not there, but when you join that, you may realize that this is not true.
I think one myth about business analytics is everyone thinks that only data scientist does the job, right? And for one, have been on all three sides. I've been on the business analyst, I've been data engineer at times, and I've also been on the data scientist side. And I can tell you one thing: for the data scientist to do anything, the very important critical part of the journey are business analysts, data analysts, data engineers, and then the work comes to a data scientist. So no role in business analytics is like a cream role. You have to understand that for everyone, they have their own skill set that they work with. So everyone will find their own niche. I personally found my own niche when I was in data as a data analyst or a business analyst. While I did multiple roles, I found my love for that part of the story. So, like I was telling you, a framework. So it all depends on what you like. When you work a lot on it, you will understand. And one personal advice to anyone would be that don't go by the salaries that you see. One major metric that everyone has is because data scientists are paid 1.5x of others, oh, we'll go and become a data scientist. No, not everyone will like that job. Not everyone loves statistics. Not everyone would be fascinated when they see a graph in front of them, right? So it depends on what you like. If you are a story person, a business analyst kind of a role works for you. If you are a very coding minded person where you understand, okay, this is what I have and this is where I want to reach, maybe a data engineer role works better for you. Or if you are a very mathematical person, you like the complexities of maths, statistics, then you are bound for a data scientist kind of a role. So that's my way of looking at different profiles. It's a myth that one profile is better than the other. Please don't get into it.
Got it. So definitely, basically, you need to keep exploring and knowing things, and
Yes.
then you may realize where you really want to do, and
Yes.
then you should do that. So that's a
Perfect.
great advice. And I think one more advice which you've given is getting clarity itself is very important. See, whatever you
Yes.
want to get into first, you should know in simple words what it is.
Yes.
And so that's a very great advice. Maybe last question, Ashish.
Sure.
You know, and this is not like a very specific to your career or something, but it is more about your advice or your maybe 2 cents for all the people who are stuck in their career or who think that they are stuck in their career, right? With your example, with your experience or your own learnings, what do you think they should start doing now if they feel stuck in their job for whatever reason? The reasons could be different.
So I have also been in those shoes. Once upon a time, I also felt like I was stuck in my career. What helped me personally, I'll talk about those examples. When I felt I was stuck in my career, one thing that I always did was upskill, right? So if I felt stuck in a data engineer kind of a role, I upskilled myself that I could go into a data scientist kind of a role. I upskilled myself. So during the lockdown, I thought I would want to explore statistics more. I want to be more on the optimization side of it, right? So I went to, there used to be EDX back then, right? So I went to EDX and I did. MIT used to have a very interesting course on data analytics. I might say, I don't remember the course name anymore, but it was a very interesting course. And I actually spent 12 weeks trying to do it, trying to understand how I can use statistical techniques. Right. So, how can I be good at optimization? How can I be good at trying to make regression models, trying to make any kind of a model and such, right? So that was something which I felt helped. The fun fact, I did optimization back then. I didn't know I would end up doing my MBA in 2025. In DS, the second part of the course is all optimization. And I always used to tell Professor Shankar, I hated the first part of DS, but second part of DS I loved it because it was optimization. It was what I like and the way in which he used to talk about stories, right? So that was one thing. So upskilling, the first thing. Second thing is, which I always felt was never be afraid to experiment. Right? It's fine. You won't like it. The worst that can happen to you is you won't like a certain role. But raise up your hand when an opportunity comes. Why is it so difficult that you don't want to take up a little bit more of responsibility and try to experiment? Take more responsibility and just spend some extra time. You will at least understand that whether you like that role or you don't like the role, right? So it's always good to let people know that you are interested. So if you are someone who just keeps silent and who sits on your desk, then people don't care. Honestly, there are hundreds of people that they have to look at, right? So how can they actually come and look inside your mind and know that whether you want to grow in your career? So I always felt I had to be very vocal about how I feel, what I want to do. I have honest discussions whether, okay, I feel stuck. Can I do something? How can I make my profile better? I always, so I don't know whether I should say this or not, but still I'll say it. So I always have this test that I keep putting myself into. I have this resume test. I always say, whatever work I'm doing today, can I go back and look at whether it good enough to be put on my resume? And the day I feel it's not good enough to have a resume, I know I need to have an intervention. I am the architect of my own career. I need to know today is the time when I need to go reevaluate, then ask for help. I can go and talk to a manager. If your manager is not approachable, can you think of external ways of doing it? Can you just go and do like I did? I did upskilling, right? Can I not do that? Think about ways in which you can do it. So I think these are the ways which I personally feel you can do better. And one last thing is you cannot be afraid of taking a risk here. It's okay. You will just fail. That's the worst case scenario that will happen to you. Uh, have a little bit of faith in yourself and your capabilities. If you want to do something, invest some time into it. Consider in the MBA jargon, consider it as sunk cost. That's the only thing that is going to happen.
I think a very interesting point you raised at the last. I mean, not doing anything itself is a risk.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's how I think about it. If you're not,
Yeah.
if you're feeling stuck and you're not doing anything, you're
Yes.
actually taking bigger risk. And
Correct.
that I've seen also. It's not that I am all intelligent and hence I know it. I have seen it happening with me also. So then we
Yes.
understand, right? And it's good
Yes.
to learn as quickly as possible in your career. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
That was a great discussion, Ashish, and there's so many insights I have with this. It is going to be super useful for a lot of people, right? I'm kind of summarizing what you said. One is, taking ownership of your, work. That what you learned from one of your manager, Tarun. That was
Yeah.
a great advice, and that's how it kind of. I mean, and as I would also say that same thing, right? Even for me, my first boss was the person who kind of changed the way how I look at things, and that was also the taking the ownership.
Yeah.
So that is something which I also learned. I can totally resonate with it. Then second is whether I am happy with my work, right? Can I put it for that? So if I am not happy, then why should I put? So that's the thing. Then we talked about the course which you liked about DBAI, Professor Shankar Venkatgiri, where you learned
Yeah.
how technical aspect of AI and how business are integrated together, how the decisions are taken. Then
Yeah.
we talked about resume, that what different kind of, although you worked in diverse situation, but the common theme was business value, what business value you created,
Yeah.
right? So that was very important, and that same thing reflected in your interview also. And I think it is very kind of linked also. If you're clear about your impact and about your resume, the interview will follow. Right?
Yeah.
So that's a very important thing. And then we talked about how do you prepare for a data analytics role, where first and foremost things which is very important. I think this is like a like the most foundational, but the best thing is you get clarity of whatever you want to do. You get
Yeah.
clarity. Try to start learning from the first principle, again very important, and
Yeah.
learn your basic tools like Excels, SQLs, all those things. Then maybe in visualization piece, use PowerPoint, Tableau, and then maybe that's how you evolve in your career. And then we talked about AI. How do you use AI? At least prompting you should know, right? So that you are able to do that better. Learn some. You suggested some course in edX and then LinkedIn Learning
Yeah.
about what you can take those courses, right? The myth is that business analytics is not just about data scientists, and
Yeah.
definitely don't follow data scientists if you don't love the maths part of it, but you are more of a storyteller. For that, you might be interested in data analyst role. And if you're interested in more engineering kind of thing, maybe data engineering could be a good listing. But don't just follow the trend and just follow the trend salary. Follow your passion, and I think you will get whatever you deserve. And then, with last but not the least, we discussed about being stuck in the career. What should we do? And I think if I can summarize it, it's basically about breaking the mold, right? In some
Yeah.
way, you have to get uncomfortable. Either you have to upskill, you need to talk to your manager, you need to experiment, you might have to take some test, some risk, right? And then, very interestingly, you said very good quote that I am the architect of my own career, right?
Yeah.
That's a good thing. And the last, you also suggested one test, resume test, whether whatever I'm doing is impactful enough to be shown to everyone else. So
Yeah.
that's how I could get from this discussion, and this very insightful for me also. And thank you so much for that. And the idea is that only that we learn the insights from your own experiences and we share it with all. And that's the bottom line of these kind of sessions. So thank you so much, Ashish, for agreeing to do this session. And it was super helpful. And I'm sure this, when we publish it, a lot of people will get benefited from it. So thank you so much. And I would like you to be part of mentoring group also if you are
Sure.
comfortable and if you have time. I would extend the maybe the invitation and everything. But yes, we will be in touch.
Sure. Alok, that was very nice of you to actually invite me. Big shout out to Kajal and Mehak, who were coordinating on the back of this
Yeah.
and who
Yes.
gave me this chance for us to connect. I have been in your sessions, so I have been on the other side of the in your sessions when you were coming to college for taking sessions around certain career trajectories. But yeah, we never had a one-on-one. It was
Yes.
very interesting how
Awesome.
you summed it up. My discussion. I thought, okay, did I say all this? It was really interesting on how you summed it up. So
Yes. Great.
perfect. I would love to be part of more such discussions. Love to
Sure.
be associated with you guys, and I look forward to helping the community at large. That's
Definitely, definitely. I'll share the link and everything
sure.
with you, and then we can then start connecting.
Sure.
Okay. Chalo.
Thank you so much, Alok. Thank you so
Thank
much for your time.
you.
Nice talking to
All
you.
the best.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Bye
Bye.
bye.